He's special, as driven as anyone I know. He made a difference to everyone he was around in 10 short days in the G League. I couldn't be happier for him. Good pickup by the Suns. Isaiah Thomas, 10-day contract with the Phoenix Suns, in a part of title chases in Boston. The veteran leadership, even if he doesn't play, I think that's a guy you can look at in the locker room.
So it didn't take us very long to get another update on Isaiah Thomas, and although this is a very familiar update, it's definitely an upward trend for the former 60th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications, because we're almost at 900K subscribers. I believe we're at 1K subscribers away. Now that we get all that out of the way, do the intro. This is easily my favorite promotion. All Caitlin Clark needs is a single point for her square to convert, which means we only need to make one more pick on Prize Picks in order to 3x our money. You guys have been making a lot of money on Prize Picks, and if you guys need help making picks, I give away my picks for free on my Instagram story at TheFlightmike. And if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, right now when you use my promo code TheFlightmike, you get a deposit match up until $100. Make sure you check out my story right now to see if I entered my Caitlin Clark pick, and thank you Prize Picks for the sponsor. Mic check 1212. What's going on, everybody? At this point, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the story of Isaiah Thomas, a man that is probably the ultimate example of why basketball players will always choose business over loyalty to a basketball team. Because in 2017, during Isaiah Thomas's best season of his career, this man put it all out there for the Boston Celtics. The man was playing with a nagging hip injury and at the same time lost his sister China Thomas to a tragic car accident. Despite this, Isaiah Thomas would face off against the Chicago Bulls, would then attend his sister's funeral, and then would continue on facing off against the Washington Wizards, where he would actually lose a tooth in this game, eventually carrying the Boston Celtics through a 7-game series where they would meet with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, as was usual in the 2010s era, any team that would meet LeBron James in the Eastern Conference Finals would typically lose, but regardless, things were looking very, very promising for Isaiah Thomas. And the city of Boston definitely embodied him as a result of this. Now, at the time, Isaiah Thomas was coming off of a season where he averaged 29 points per game, 38% from 3, and 46% from field goal range. And despite everything that he went through and putting it all out on the line for the Boston Celtics, Danny Ainge had other plans for Isaiah Thomas. Now, Isaiah Thomas would say in later interviews that this was kind of deceitful of the Boston Celtics. At least they weren't very upfront with him about the severity of his injury.
The only thing that I would have against Boston, you know, everybody hated Boston for what they did to me. It's a business, I understand it. I'm not tripping on it. The only I think they handled wrong was not explaining to me what the extent of my injury could be if I do play. That was the biggest thing for me that I dislike, because nobody gave me no insight. Okay, if you do play, this can happen.
We have to hear that, because if you tell us it's gonna be sore,
because it was a bone bruise. At the end of the day, it was a bone bruise. Like that's what they said. So if you're gonna tell me it's a bone bruise, I'm playing 10 times out of 10. Like I'm gonna figure it out.
I'm gonna get through that.
So that was probably the only thing that I wish they would have done different, and I would have really sat down and really asked those questions, like worst case scenario, what could happen?
But eventually, you know what would happen. The Boston Celtics would trade Isaiah Thomas with Jay Crowder and Ante Zizic, and even gave up their unprotected 2018 first-round pick from Brooklyn to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for Kyrie Irving. Now, we all know how the Kyrie Irving era in Boston would go.
I appreciate that, Scout. I joined in, but I shared it with some of my teammates as well as the organization and everyone else in Boston. You guys will have me back. I plan on re-signing here next year.
Boom! But in the case of Isaiah Thomas, playing on that hip injury ended up ruining his career. He would only play 15 games with the Cleveland Cavaliers before getting traded to the Lakers. He would play 17 games with the Lakers, and this was during his contract season. So instead of being placed in a situation where he could sign a maximum contract, Isaiah Thomas signed a veteran minimum contract with the Denver Nuggets. He would barely play with the Denver Nuggets and then would become a journeyman in the NBA. The next stop would be the Washington Wizards, and before you know know it, Isaiah Thomas was just getting 10-day contracts. He'd signed a 10-day with the New Orleans Pelicans in 2021 before he was relegated to the G League. Now, every time Isaiah Thomas would go to the G League, he'd absolutely dominate, and this is why I'm saying the cycle is starting again, because he would play for the Grand Rapids Gold and would drop 42 points and 8 assists before the Lakers decided to sign him to a 10-day contract for depth reasons. Then he'd go to the Dallas Mavericks for a 10-day contract before going back to the Grand Rapids Gold, dominating for the Grand Rapids Gold again, which would result in the Charlotte Hornets signing him to a 10-day contract. It was really emotional, man. You'd see moments where Isaiah Thomas was just crying on the floor.
They gave up on me. They gave up on me.
Until he decided to make a comeback, which was what our last video was on. Now, the interesting part about this is, in early March, the Salt Lake City Stars signed Isaiah Thomas to their G League. The cool thing about this is the Utah Jazz's GM is none other than Danny Ainge, who is the same individual that traded Isaiah Thomas to the Cleveland Cavaliers to begin with. And since then, Isaiah Thomas did pretty much what he typically does in the G League. He played in 4 games for the Stars. He scored at least 30 points in each and every single game, averaged 32.5 points and 5.3 assists while making 25 of his 46 3-point shots, which was good enough to be 44.6% from 3. And at that point, an NBA team looked at the situation and said, okay, this guy has no business in the G League. So once again, a contending team that is in desperate need of depth, and I guess you could say fourth quarter scoring as well, decided to give Isaiah Thomas a phone call. And eventually we found out that, just like in years past, Isaiah Thomas is going to have a second stint with a team that he's played with before. In 2022, he signed with the Los Angeles Lakers for a 10-day contract. This time, it looks like the Phoenix Suns are signing Isaiah Thomas to a 10-day contract. So this has come to us from none other than Shams Charania, who tweeted out, "IT is back. 11-year vet and 2-time All-Star Isaiah Thomas is planning to sign a 10-day contract with the Phoenix Suns. Sources tell The Athletic and The Stadium. Thomas averaged 33 points on 45% shooting from 3 for Salt Lake City in the G League, scoring 30 in 4 games. Shams would then quote tweet this saying, Isaiah Thomas total performances of 32, 30, 34, and 34 points in his 4 G League games for Salt Lake City, making 25 of 56 3-pointers, and now is set to provide shooting, playoff experience, and veteran leadership to the Suns. So let's break this down. Is Isaiah Thomas going to be starting for the Phoenix Suns? Probably not, but is he going to get meaningful playing time for the Phoenix Suns? Most definitely. The Phoenix Suns are in desperate need of guard depth now that Damian Lee and Josh Okogie are both out. And during this 10-day stretch, Isaiah Thomas is possibly going to appear in 6 games for the Phoenix Suns. Now, historically, when this would happen to Isaiah Thomas, he would put forward good minutes, man, but it clearly wasn't the same as he was for the Boston Celtics. Isaiah Thomas is a player that could catch fire quick, but at this point in his career, he's a very high volume, low efficiency type of scorer, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, man, but when you pair that with the fact that he's a gigantic defensive liability, there's a question about how sustainable his fit will be for the Phoenix Suns, who could desperately use some fourth quarter scoring, considering the fact that Kevin Durant is just refusing to score in the fourth quarter now for the Phoenix Suns. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. At the end of the day, the fact that Isaiah Thomas is still getting signed to NBA contracts despite being 35 years old is nothing short of amazing, and I'm always going to be rooting for him no matter what. I hope he can sign a second 10-day contract with the Phoenix Suns. My personal prediction is after this 10-day contract expires, or once Okogie and Damian Lee returns, there's a chance you can find Isaiah Thomas on a different team. But at the end of the day, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he signs to the Phoenix Suns for the rest of the season. And I would love to see Isaiah Thomas play some meaningful minutes in the playoffs or something of that sort. I just don't know how plausible that is. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about Isaiah Thomas pretty much doing the same thing again? Do you think it's going to be different this time? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.